Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Hogan, the director of the Milwaukie Poetry Series. And I want to welcome you all here to our William Stafford birthday celebration on actually the day after his birthday. So we're very fortunate to have the celebration so close to his birthday. Thank you for being here. It's always wonderful to see people come out. And we're honoring Bill Stafford today, and we're honoring poetry. And we're doing it by committing our time to be here and to do that and do it in the community. I also want to welcome anyone who is on the live stream, because we are live streaming this event. We will be recording it, and so it will be coming up on the Letting Library YouTube channel in about 10 days, a week, 10 days. Five days, Josh tells me. Okay, well, that's great. So it's coming. And we have some people with us today I want to introduce. We have David Goodrum, who is the president of the Oregon Poetry Association. And do you want to say a few words about OPA?
Yeah, just a couple words. This is my third year on the board, and my second year as president. So no good deed goes unpunished, okay? We were all standing in a line, and suddenly everyone else had stepped back a shot. No, it's quite an honor and quite fun. This year, 2026, is the 70th anniversary of the Oregon Poetry Association, and hopefully we'll find some ways to recognize that, and that's why I was really, really thrilled to be invited to be a part of this, because I see it as part of the way to spread the word about OPA. There's some bookmarks over there, OPA bookmarks. And in fact, I'll be quoting some of my OPA colleagues as I read Stafford's poems, too. So I'm leaning on other shoulders to make my presentation today. So really appreciate it, Tom. Thank you. We're about 330 members. And membership is very inexpensive. There's several contests and a conference, which we're going to start calling a conference because it's more of a celebration. It's more of a festival. And that will probably be in October. So things to look forward to. If you're not a member, become one. Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. Let's give it. Yeah, the hand, too, for stepping up. You know, when that happened, and that scene you're describing happened, and everybody stepped back, you didn't step back, too.
Not fast enough.
No, well, that's good that you didn't do that. Thank you for being here. Also here is Tim Barnes from the Friends of William Stafford, right here. And we're going to hear from Tim at the start of the open mic. And then Tim is going to be one of the readers in the open mic, and so we'll hear about Friends of William Stafford. I want to make some thanks. Thanks to the city of Milwaukie for their support for the Milwaukie Poetry Series. We're in our 19th season, so they've been supportive from the beginning, and we're really, really grateful about that. Thanks, secondly, to the Letting Library. We have a new Letting Library here. It's been, it's 5 years old now. But it still seems like the new Letting Library to me, and it's lovely. Thanks to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. So one of our committee members is standing back here, Kristen Roeder, and my lovely wife Jane, who is on the committee. Not everyone could be here. And so what about the Pond House? A good question. Well, we were in the Pond House for a number of years, but the answer is no. No. No, the plan always was to build a new library and to get a new library because the old one was built in the 50s. And it was a lovely building. I still am very nostalgic about it myself. It had a second story. But when that happened, the Pond House was an asset in the process of building that. And if you walk the library, this library is one story. And it actually fits on the footprint better than any two-story building did. And if you walk down here, it's more connected with the park, too. So that's a good feature. Parking issue out here, I think we do that, but it's a lot of places have parking issues. So we love the pond house, though, but thanks for your question about that. Right here. Yeah, other side of the pond. Yeah, we can follow the geese. The geese used to walk across the street. The geese do walk across the street, but they expect cars to stop for them, which the cars do, as they should. The thanks to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee, because you don't have things happen unless you have people working on them. So we're very grateful. And finally, thanks to Willamette Falls Media. So Josh from Willamette Falls Media is back here. He's the magician. He's the one that's going to make this, makes this all go. So we are very happy for what Josh does and for our relationship with Willamette Falls Media. So how we're going to proceed is that we're going to hear from Steve Paul first. And Steve is in Kansas City. And I'm going to introduce Steve, and then we're going to come back to live here. We have two featured readers. We do have two Hogans here, which are no relation. Our second featured reader is Marge Hogan. And so she's going to be next, and then after that, David Goodrum. And then we'll have the open mic. So just before the open mic, we'll hear from Tim Barnes, and then Tim will be our first reader. There is a sign-up sheet over here for the open mic. 2 poems. We'll do a first round, and we'll see how we are with time. But as far as reading poems, 2 poems by Bill Stafford, one by Bill Stafford and one of your own, but 2 poems. So we will proceed that way. I want to introduce Steve. This has been something that has been very fortuitous to us. We have the opportunity to hear from the author of a new biography of William Stafford, which we are going to in just a minute or so. So Steve Paul was a newspaper book review editor when he crossed paths with William Stafford in the late 1980s. 10 years ago, after retiring from a career in daily journalism, he steered his writing practice into literary biography. First came his Slice of Life, Hemingway at 18, followed by Literary Alchemist, The Writing Life of Evan S. Connell, 2021. 5 years ago, his focus turned to Stafford, and he began mining the poet's vast archives, interviewing dozens of family, friends, and fellow writers, and gathering a bounty of material from libraries coast to coast. His full-length biography is expected to be published in 2027 by Oregon State Press. A New England native, Steve has lived in Kansas City, Missouri for more than half a century. He serves as president of Biographers International Organization, a nonprofit with a membership of about 600 authors. So would you join me in welcoming from a distance, Steve Paul. Steve.
Thank you so much, Tom, and those in the audience. Thank you to Josh for the technical magic he performed, and to the library for allowing me to parachute in from afar. I hope to be there in person this year. Didn't quite work out. Maybe next year, and as Tom indicated, it's a little premature for my book. I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that Oregon State University Press will publish this early next year. We'll see. We're still in process. What I wanted to do today is to share a couple of brief excerpts from the book, to give you, hopefully whet your appetite. Give you a sense for some of the things I've discovered. I'll also share a couple of poems by William Stafford that you probably have never heard or even seen. I'm pretty sure Tim Barnes have never seen the poems that I'm going to be reading here shortly.
So I'll do that as well, depending on the time. Let me get that. Stopwatch going, so I won't go over my allotted time. Um, I, I did a similar event here recently for the Oregon Southern University in Ashland, and I didn't want to read the same pieces. I didn't want to do the same spiel that I gave to them, just in case some people might want to watch both of these events. So I'm giving you a couple of different pieces from the book than I gave to the Ashland audience. So here we go. This is from the first chapter. It's not the beginning of the first chapter, it's somewhere in the middle. Stafford would not become the poet we know without his fundamental, life-shaping experiences of the Kansas outdoors. In the hills north of Hutchinson, where buffalo once roamed and rattlesnakes sizzled, young Bill would crouch down and watch for prairie dogs, quote, which folded their little paws to stare beyond their fence where I was. Beyond the edges of his small town, he once wrote, quote, was adventure, fields forever, or rivers that wended off over the horizon forever. His outdoors education accumulated. The Arkansas River, and I will just explain to you that everywhere else you might see that word and think it's Arkansas, but in these parts it's the Arkansas River, which, quote, a great river, a beautiful shining river, end quote, which beckoned on the west side of town, hiking the grassy plains, hearing the wind in the trees, fishing and exploring the land where indigenous people had walked. The natural world from deep within and to the sky and beyond would become something like a guiding spirit. Quote, wherever we looked, the land would hold us up, he'd write, planting his outlook squarely on behalf of the earth. Do you have a sense of place? He'd write, echoing a writer's conversation. Yes, this planet. The waterways of Kansas became a recurring theme in his consciousness. The Danesca River, south of Hutchinson, for example, served as the site of a natural world ritual, if we can read his poem Ceremony as at least partly autobiographical. The way Stafford worked, some of it could be true. A boy puts his hand in the river. A muskrat bites, quote, the third finger of my left hand. The water turns red. No, not just red. Here, Stafford deploys one of the fanciest words he'd ever use in a poem. Quote, I saw me in the current flowing through the land, rolling, touching roots, the world incarnadined and the river richer by a kind of magic. Stafford, of course, had read at Shakespeare. From Macbeth's guilty lament, quote, will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? No, this my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine, making the green one red. Stafford's marriage to the natural force of the stream was an everlasting one. As for its place in the stream of literary identity, Stafford scholar Tim Barnes, hello Tim, has written, quote, this bond is essential to Stafford's vision and looks back to Wordsworth, the American transcendentalists, and farther to Native American animism. Moving much deeper into the book, I think I have uncovered a really interesting document, and which I don't think very many people have seen, and I'm lucky, I think, to report on it. But it's an episode not many people know about, I'm pretty sure, in Stafford's career. This is the beginning of chapter 9. In late 1960, Robert Greenwood and Newton Beard at Talisman Press in Los Gatos, California, issued 450 copies of West of Your City, most in cloth-bound hardcover, 100 in paper wrappers. One copy with its striking fish illustration on the cover made its way to England and into the hands of the expatriate American poet Sylvia Plath. It's unclear how it got there, but she welcomed it. Plath had spent a transformational 2 months at Yaddo in 1959. She read many of the current journals in Yaddo's library, so it's likely she encountered Stafford's work in The Nation, the Paris Review, or elsewhere. In crafting what would soon become her own first collection, she was particularly taken with the poetry of Theodore Retke, a Pacific Northwest writer and Stafford acquaintance. She met Retke in February 1961, not long after the publication of West of Your City. Retke was visiting London at the time, and later that spring, Plath wrote to him expressing hope that she and her husband, Ted Hughes, might land teaching gigs on the West Coast in coming years. She also asked him to support her application for a Guggenheim Fellowship, and, by the way, would he read her enclosed poems, including Tulips, written, she said, after my latest bout in hospital. So Retke might have been a conduit for Stafford's book. Did he recommend it, and did she subsequently track it down? We don't know. In any case, Plath was enthusiastic about Stafford's poems. She had been tapped to edit an anthology of current American poets for the Critical Quarterly, a prominent UK literary journal. The idea was to introduce to British readers a wide range of voices, quote, lively American poets of all persuasions, from Beat Corso to Wilbur the Elegant, as she put it. She was stressing young poets and new books. Stafford, who'd recently turned 46, counted in the latter category. Plath told one of her editors, the critic A.E. Dyson, Stafford, quote, is an old poet, but just has an exciting first book out and needs to be known, close quote. Plath read Stafford's book closely, ultimately choosing 3 of his poems for American Poetry Now. These were In the Oregon Country, parentheses, taught spare lyric form, she concluded, A Survey, and The Well Rising, the latter of which replace a first round consideration, Walking West. She made notes on the back of an envelope. Stafford's work possessed, quote, plain speaking energy, she wrote, and there was a fine absence of rhetoric, the, quote, thought up and thought out quality that dogs the academic essayist poet who can compose a gray, respectable sestina before his 9 o'clock class, she wrote. In poems such as Ceremony and Hail Mary, Plath was impressed by the, quote, strong sense of the sound of place names and proper names. Ceremony had the Nenaska River, and Hail Mary referenced 2 Kansas places, Wichita and Haven, plus, quote, the high Arizona swirl. She wrote down the names of flora and fauna in his poems. Quote, buffalo grass, cottonwood, cedar, badger, hawk, wildcat. She found the move to California, which later became one of Stafford's better known poems, to be less successful because he moved away from the object, the actual experience, into the abstract. And just so you know how I know what she wrote, hopefully this will end up in the book, but this is the back of Sylvia Plath's envelope. It's a lovely object, and I felt pretty lucky to discover it. American Poetry Now was typeset and ready for release in the fall of 1961. Only 2 other poets were represented by 3 poems, W.S. Merwin and Adrienne Rich. Other contributors included Daniel Hoffman, Stafford's fellow Iowa Workshop grad W.D. Snodgrass, and Anne Sexton. Although Plath intended to use Gregory Corso's A Dreamed Realization to represent the Beats, whose notoriety remained on the flaming hot end of the poetry spectrum, a permission's uncertainty caused her to drop it late in the process. In her biographical study of Plath 6 decades later, Heather Clark judged Plath's selections to be relatively conservative. Nevertheless, although this was a small pebble in poetry's pond, it did serve to stamp the newly published Stafford with a broader measure of literary acceptance. And even Plath was astounded that her 24-page pamphlet sold 12,000 copies. The critic G.S. Fraser helped push it along in a TLS review in December by concluding, quote, young English poets, as well as all lovers of poetry, ought to buy and study carefully Miss Plath's excellent small anthology. And just so you know, there is evidence of that anthology. It looked like this. Uh, Beautiful little pamphlet, three Stafford poems in it. Not too hard to track down, but if you're interested, you might give it a try. So those are the excerpts from the book. I want to close with a couple of the Stafford poems. I will explain that as recently as the last couple of months, I visited or revisited a parcel of material that a poet friend of mine here in Kansas City had held on to. She was a writer at Hallmark Cards who invited Stafford to come to Hallmark in Kansas City in 1991, where he spent a day-long workshop. They had met at the Centrum Writers Conference in Port Townsend, which Stafford went to many times. And in his correspondence with her, he sent her a good number of poems, several of which were written during the 1990 Centrum Conference, which they attended together, or they were both there, which is why he was sharing these poems. In my not analysis, but in my inventorying of these poems, some of them we know they've been published in The Way It Is. Several of them have not been collected and were only published in, say, a small literary journal. I believe I have one, which I'll read second, that has never been collected or published. So this poem is called Important Moments. It's in four parts, very short. One, as the tide turned, Churchill lashed the water all the way out the estuary and returned with a swagger saying, quote, if it ever comes back, I'll do it again. Two, as my bike rounded a corner, I learned about Newton's laws and loose gravel on pavement and how good a helmet is, all at the same time. 3. We've got it made, Barney said, gesturing from the new deck on a rare November day, while his wife sat knitting him a new sweater and laughing in her wheelchair. 4. Silently from its remote platform, Cyclops turns its telescope on an event that happened out there in the Milky Way so long ago that nobody dreamed it would matter here on Earth for us today. Tom, are we okay if I read one more? I know I've just hit 13 minutes. Just raise a hand and I'll just go. One more and that'll be it. This poem, as I said, Stafford published two or three poems called Meditation or A Meditation. This poem is titled A Meditation, but it's not one of those he ever published, as best as I could tell. A meditation. These trees have invested so much in their part of the land that it hurts us to take it, and for years, deep there in the soil, we come upon remnants, little grasping roots, clutching their loved particles of plain old rock and the mulch of ancestors who came to this country when it still smoked from creation. I turn my eyes away, I try not to smell that imploring cut in a cedar, and when a chainsaw shrieks its battle cry, we know how soon the air will shudder news of the massacre. Walk into a grove, your shadow melts into the rich chocolate kingdom of giant shadow. Great realms of worship your arms can't sustain will arch for you, and a breath more steeped in veneration than we can give will touch along through alcoves that open and bow and pass. We only borrow our world, draw its air in, give it back, touch a tree, wonder, and go on. Anyway, I think that's pretty great. Thank you all very much for listening, and hopefully I'll meet you next year. Appreciate you having me. I'm going to stick around and watch the readings on YouTube, but I think they want me to say goodbye from Zoom.
At a public high school. She received the 2025 Astoria Writers Guild Write-in Residence to begin a series of poems about labor, what we do for work, how it shapes us, how it consumes and fails to define us. She is featured at local readings, and her poems have appeared in various publications, including Bear Deluxe, Voice Catcher, Third Elements, Pretty Owl, High Chef, Paper Bark, Cold Mountain, and a lantern, Radical Light Lanterna, among others. Would you join me in welcoming our next featured reader, Marge Hogan?
Thank you, Tom. It takes real effort to bring people together with purpose on a Sunday. So let's celebrate that effort. It's not easy to gather, but it's good work to do, and it's so appreciated. When Armin invited me to step in and be a pinch hitter, I borrowed some books on of Stafford's work, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to dig back into things that I've loved and new things that I hadn't noticed before. I took those books with me and accidentally left them at my sister's house in Centralia this morning. She's graciously sent me some screenshots of what I needed, so apologies for using the phone for that. I have a friend whose mom works counting fish, and during the season, it feels so poetic to say, that she's counting fish. It feels like a beautiful job, but of course, every job on the inside is just long hours doing a very hard thing. I'm going to read Stafford's fish counter at Bonneville from the book Winterward. Downstream, they have killed the river, built a dam. By that power, they wire to hear a light. A turbine strides high poles to spit this flame at this flume going down. A spot glows white where an old man looks at the ghosts of the game, flickering twilight, deep, dumb shapes that glide. So many Chinook souls, so many silver-side. The poem I'll read of mine is called All Things in V's Returning, inspired by piece of a poem by Cesar Vallejo. It says, Busco volver de golpe el golpe. All things in V's returning, geese in 2 V's weeping down latitudes, and swallows return, dark V's at the pane, wet with rain that returns its sullen V to the gutter. Wet night out, not sheets, not blankets even, heavier, comforters of rain, peaceless this peace. In such softness, how to return blow for blow, how to strike back in time. Time with its millipede fears, with its leeches, time scraping out the husk of the clock, like a spent melon, no flesh left, the V of thin hands that gather up again a multiplied nothing. I drive out to the point where 2 rivers take up together, where all our barges will be someone else's, their trout, our carp, their trash and shiners, all our salvage merged. And I go back by the other road, by the shipping docks, by the cold marsh, making a V of my tracks. How to be hard enough now, to be the broad, hard leaves of winter, the great valve at coulee opening, and also the lever. Even better, how to be hard as the river, multiplied, multiplier, to return relentless as the water. This is from that book, The Way It Is, What Gets Away. A little poem that I had never read before and that really struck me when I picked it up this week. Little things hide. Sometimes they scuttle away like dry leaves in a sudden wind. Tide pools are full of these panicky creatures, and rock slides have jittery populations hidden from the world and even from each other. Herodotus tells about the shyest animal there is. It's the one even Alexander the Great and his whole conquering army had never seen, and people, no matter how hard they try, will never see. Carl Jung said that like the sea itself, our unconscious yields an endless and self-replenishing abundance of creatures. This is called Prettier Trash. On Friday, I drove to the coast and parked somewhere off Cannon Road, where late light draws the thinnest lace-like white on far-off pitted waves. Fog beams of farther boats arch cape at dusk, a lump of long shadow, lone scoters, brindle sand, spit, bones, and past the fenced lot, one trunk turned upward, mussel shells, coals of burned driftwood, representing what? Learned helplessness and these shy breath holes sucked down in the mind's narrow shoals. Brackish ribs of water stranded upland, tufts of rushes, trash, and prettier trash too, rubber bands, beach glass, plastic ribbons, and foam in ribbons, and small wave-worn stones. You know, when I first read William Stafford, I think in high school, he became a poet that I would turn to for advice on becoming a listener, you know, a noticer of those shy and unseen animals. Or I think, like Steve said, Sylvia Plath appreciated the attention to very specific natural objects, right? But over time, and especially recently, I think Stafford is a poet that I turn to think about what does it mean to live a truly fierce life. For each of us now, I'm sure that you're also contemplating what things will we refuse to tolerate? You know, what things can we stand up and say, I will not participate in this? So I look to him for guidance too in that. This is from the book Another World Instead. It's good to think about building another world instead. It's called Walking at Night. Now I'm alone, following the down-war slur of blowing sleet past lights, and I remember the tremendous little train, quiet now with evening, sagging along that valley on the way home, those fragile Sunday mornings, the men and women giving those days away, never caring what comes over the curve of the earth, measuring jukebox life by drinks in a war boom bar, wearing wings from death, terror across the ocean, those walls sweeping together with walls in corners of known, those persons looking at each other, their lives a richness and transported choirs of heroes on a buoyant sea. Now, in time of darkness and cold, those islands of fairness, piercing and staggering, live breathlessly like children dashing through a room. And I have become a student of having and not having. That's from March 1943. Part of the project that I'm working on now is to write about work. I'm enjoying writing not only about my own work, but delving into the work of others, and that's partly through looking at transcripts of people talking about the jobs that they do all day long. This text is from an interview with Dr. Alice Stewart that was on KBOO Radio in 1990. She's a British physician and epidemiologist, and her insight and scientific rigor and determination led to a lot of evidence detailing the hazards of nuclear power. I think being a scientist is probably one of those jobs that you have to be persistent. There's a lot of repetition. And the ghazal is a poetic form that also has a lot of repetition, and the work lends itself to that form. So I tried that here. Radiation, the bell curve. As soon as the war was over, all interest in the subject evaporated, but the effect has not disappeared, even at a near zero level. There were no further funds, and I was trying to think, since the effect had not disappeared at that near zero level, I thought of going to the mothers of children who had died of leukemia, where the effect had not disappeared at a near zero level. Each mother was compared with a live child, the same age, sex, and region. We wondered if the effects would disappear at a near zero level, but when we came to add up how often the dead children had been x-rayed, a diagnostic that exposes the body to ionizing radiation at low levels, compared with the live ones, it was twice as often. That is to say, the effect had not disappeared at that near zero level. Other studies were doing linearity effects, notably among atom bomb survivors, those who had not yet disappeared from exposure at much higher levels. So with these dead children, we were adding a point to other people's bell curves, saying this effect has not disappeared, even at a near zero level. I'm going to read a piece of Stafford's from, also from The Way It Is, called Notice What This Poem Is Not Doing. I don't know what the poem is not doing. I'm curious what you think he meant by this poem is not doing. It does a lot for me, this poem, but notice what this poem is not doing. The light along the hills in the morning comes down slowly, naming the trees white, then coasting the ground for stones to nominate. Notice what this poem is not doing. A house, a barn, the old quarry where the river shrugs. How much of this place is yours? Notice what this poem is not doing. Every person gone has taken a stone to hold and catch the sun. The carving says, not here, but called away. Notice what this poem is not doing. The sun, the earth, the sky all wait. The crows and redbirds talk. The light along the hills has come, has found you. Notice what this poem has not done. Not here, but called away. One of the things that I really appreciate about the work of this kind of reading is we know that we're not celebrating somebody because they're gone, but because they continue to be with us. You know, and, pretty sure that the dead are still with us. Is that right? This is called A Lake on the Border, and it's the last poem that I'll read. On the best day of my life, I go to a lake between two states. Jamie drives me there, and Lucy is visiting, and the sun makes rust patterns on the iron-colored road where we stop at a farm to pick dark berries, and later on, a box of brown small eggs. When I look out the window, I see in leaves a deer stock still on thin legs, watching us pass quickly, and soon we come to the warm shore of the lake. I leave the eggs under a tree in the shade. I take off some of my clothes and walk into the edges of water. On the other shore, I see a person, small in the distance, wave with 2 hands from another state. I wave back. Then I slip under, where the lake bed is paved with round eggs of stones, rust-patterned by moss or silt, the dark fruit sideways shadowed across far-off farms scattered past a hard light freckling the hidden highway, and deeper, out of the dark eye of the deer, I see quickly passing cars on a road, and if I swim down closer, I can see the clear faces of the strangers in each window. On the best day of my life, I went to the shore of a lake between 2 states. I looked across and saw a woman set down her burden under a tree and walk half naked into the water. She couldn't hear me, so I waved both arms in warning, but she only waved back with one hand, then tipped her whole body under. The sun washed over the stunned stones of the bank and trees that stood stock still and the edges of a lake on the border, and clipped the ripples that she left until they grew still. And still she is down there. She is still under. Thank you so much.
Well, what an ending. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm so happy that you were able to step in and read today and be part of this. And it's an opportunity for us all to meet you. So, thank you.
Tom, I have to admit I've stolen your folder.
Okay. I think I'm going to need it.
Return it now.
I think I'm going to need it.
There you go.
Let's see. Let's see if that's... I may be going to need that from when we get to the open mic. So our third featured reader today is David Goodrum. So we've met David already, and he's the author of the recently released chapbook, Abrupt Edges, the poetry collection Vitals and Other Signs of Life, and the chapbook Sparse Poetica. Born, raised, and educated in Indiana, he now resides in Corvallis. David's poetry has appeared in Tar River Poetry, Skylight 47, Tampa Review, the Orchard's Poetry Journal, which recently gave his poem Flurries a pushcart nomination, and many others. He is the current president, as we know, of the Oregon Poetry Association. So you could discover more about David at his website. So would you join me in welcoming our third featured reader today, David A. Goodrum. Yeah.
What a pleasure. What a pleasure to be here. And I'm going to start by reading some of Stafford's poems, and several of them are from the 100 Essential Poems, which I have on Kindle, so I always have it with me. And so over the years, members of the Oregon Poetry Association have written articles for the newspaper, the Statesman Journal, about many, many poets. A couple of times about William Stafford, usually on the January article. Steve Slamenda, who's currently the treasurer of the Oregon Poetry Association, wrote in one of these articles about Stafford, in his writing, a simple style conveys the vision of a profound thinker, a man with a deeply compassionate heart, and a spirituality that includes but transcends the merely philosophical and intellectual. He speaks to the reader with a voice that is gently authentic, direct, and incisive. And here's a poem that is one of these 100 essentials called Malheur before dawn. An owl sound wandered along the road with me. I didn't hear it. I breathed it into my ears. Little ones at first, the stars retired, leaving polished little circles on the sky for a while. Then the sun began to shout from below the horizon. Throngs of birds campaigned, their music a tent of sound. From across the pond, out of the mist, one drake made a V and said its name. Some vast animal of air began to rouse from the reeds and lean outward. Frogs discovered their national anthem again. I didn't know a ditch could hold so much joy. So magic a time it was that I was both brave and afraid. Some day like this might save the world. Mike Schuler wrote, William Stafford spoke with clarity about important things, using simple lyrical language. He descriptively invited us to explore exterior and interior depths of our experience. Meaning leaps from his poetry like trout, exposing us to flashes of insight regarding what may be beneath the surface of our lives. From Mike, his poems are best savored like tea, fresh bread, profound awareness, or love. And this is a poem, this one was published in Poetry in 1967, called In Fog. In fog, a tree steps back. Once gone, it joins those hordes, blizzards rage for over tundra. With new respect, I tell my dreams to grant all claims. Lavishly, my eyes close between what they saw and what that far flood inside, the universe that happens deep and steadily. Quoting from Stafford, Steve Slamenda shared that Stafford exposed writing as, quote, one of the great free human activities, offering scope for individuality and elation. Stafford also said that writers, quote, have more than space and time can offer. They have the whole unexplored realm of human vision. This poem is at the unnational monument along the Canadian border. This is the field where the battle did not happen, where the unknown soldier did not die. This is the field where grass joined hands, where no monument stands, and the only heroic thing is the sky. Birds fly here without any sound, unfolding their wings across the open. No people killed or were killed on this ground, hallowed by neglect and an air so tame that people celebrate it by forgetting its name. And this last one of his, climbing along the river. Willows never forget how it feels to be young. Do you remember where you came from? Gravel remembers. Even the upper end of the river believes in the ocean. Exactly at midnight, yesterday sighs away. What I believe is all animals have one soul. Over the land they love, they crisscross forever. And I think the last thing that I'll read, that a final note, I think bridges to many of my poems written by Steve Slamenda. He said, William Stafford's poetry reminds Steve that the fundamental value and obligation of being human is to pay attention, and that Stafford practiced and taught writing as a process of contemplation and discovery. So, a few poems from Vitals and Other Signs of Life. Waiting for discovery. This is no time to anticipate whether or not the bird will fly to the branch or the reed, or if her feathers will stay floating on the pond. For it is almost the wakeful evening, and I am somewhere between the sleep of roiling water and the sleep of ice, which wait not for the dream of bone, but of marrow, that chases the bird from the woods to the field, from stone to stone. The second poem is called After Image. When in the near dark, the leaves gray in our eyes, re-see how plants at noon are arrayed so that each leaf receives maximum light, though half the process of synthesis occurs in light's absence. As the prayer plants cathedral windows fold, and children catch fireflies in cupped hands and giggle as the flutter of wings buzzes against small jar prisons that glow, gasp at how we love trees for their shade, though they are blind to their own green, and throw it away. Oversight. This bridge spans the world's smallest natural harbor, where boats shoot the hole to enter under columns anchored deep in pillow lava. On the harbor side, a bald eagle, motionless on a limb of a large fir, protects its territory and oversees the docks, still in recovery from a tsunami that surged across the entire Pacific. And as always, the sea gives and takes. The way the government first granted and then removed this land from native tribes, so that white settlers and now tourists perch on rocks to catch a glimpse of a spout from migrating whales. Fall detection. With deeply ridged bark worsened by drought and blight, the big leaf maple peers at the dawn, or rather the golden hour eyes him, after one more gray day for a tree turned 90. With dark spalted threads running through wood under stress, colonized by imperfect fungi. The day hints an approaching storm. First a ringed moon, then southwest gloom rolling in. The unexpected burden of large, wet flakes accumulates without moonlight on aged branches, bringing the tree down in the crack of night to mulched ground, always patiently waiting. Two long trunks stretch out like legs at rest, lumber slumbering in the winter chill. Nearby fog-shrouded trees hold up the sky and grieve, and will slowly fill in the missing crown, no longer there to dream of carving his initials in the clouds. And the last two poems are from the new chapbook, Abrupt Edges, which technically got published on the last day of December. No one has printed copies. You can't order it yet, but it's 2025 and now. But okay, so these are from Abrupt Edges. Dandelion vivisection. Gather in spring before growing bitter with age. Don't pluck. Rather, pull out whole by the taproot, though be ready to dig feet deep. Save everything, for unlike sadness and poetry, every part is safe to consume. Like a bee, stretch structures apart to expose the nectary. Let sharp leaves mature, then break them to leak a milky juice. Decapitate flower from stem, then slice in two, and ponder the yellow arrays like clusters of new thoughts before they turn to seed and are blown apart by even a child's tender breath. And the last poem, Self-Portrait in Stone. Born from a creek bed, I am ragged rock that darkens when water-covered. A pale rendition of my future self languished dry on the windowsill, a gray keepsake, purgatory for swirling dust, and dreamt of soft ground, mulching what is long done and what is left undone. I've dragged myself through wet grass to clean myself from all matters. Now stranded at the stream's edge, my hand dipped in roiling snowmelt, the woodpecker telegraphs its message. You were lost. The bees discover I proffer no pollen. The leeches disregard me while they hunt toadlets recently emerged before finding the wood's shelter. My fear is I'll break down into gravel, taken into a bird's gizzard to help grind down hard seeds and turn small, rounded, smoothed, polished. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, another great ending. So thank you very much for being here and being a featured reader. So there are books available when the event is over, so you can take a look at them and see if you want to purchase any of them. We're going to move into the open mic. And on the open mic list I have Tim Barnes, Liz Nakazawa, me, then Nate, and my lovely wife Jane. So we're reading two poems, and they both can be Bill Stafford's or one of yours and one of Bill Stafford's. And hopefully that your poem should reflect or connect, we hope in some way, with Bill Stafford. We're very happy to have too Tim Barnes here. So we're grateful for the work that the Friends of William Stafford do. So let's welcome Tim. He's going to tell us a little about what Friends of William Stafford is doing, and then lead off the open mic. Tim. Thank you.
Well, I am the editor of the Friends of William Stafford Journal and newsletter, and there are copies over there, free copies if you don't have any already, don't have one already. And in this latest issue, you can find a piece about Steve Paul's book and some excerpts from it, including the little thing about Stafford's encounter with Charles Bukowski, which, if you don't know about it, is kind of fascinating, which Steve goes into, but I go into a little bit in the journal. And you can also find a essay about Bill Stafford and Ishi, the Native American California Indian who was found years after his tribe was decimated. He's found alone in the mountains of Northern California. Have anybody read that wonderful book by Ursula Le Guin's mother, Ishi, the Last Wild Indian? Anybody read that? Anyway, if that tempts you, there's a piece about it in the latest issue. I am, as an editor, I am quite interested in anybody who has something they would like to say or write about Bill. If anybody's written anything, I would welcome seeing it. And one of my things I'm interested in is, despite what a number of people say, which is that Bill's best work is collected in his books, I happen to know that is not the case. And you know how I know it? because I have been a poet for many years, and I've collected dozens and dozens of literary magazines, including magazines like this, and so I have shelves and shelves in my basement, and I can go through them and books like this, and go through and find poems by Bill Stafford that have never been published anywhere else but in a magazine. They have never appeared in any of his major volumes, like Traveling Through the Dark, or The Way It Is, or Allegiances, or I'm thinking on the name. Sorry. Yeah. What? What? Is there a book, Ask Me? No, there isn't a book. I don't think there's a book called. Yeah. Oh, yes. It's not in the selected poems. Not there. And if you want proof of that, this book, which is the William Stafford bibliography, edited by James Perry. If you go through it, you'll see there's all these names for particular poems, and Traveling Through the Dark is in there. And if you see Traveling Through the Dark, you see there's all these letters and names that it's been published in any number of places. I mean, hundreds of places. And also the poem 15 has been published in lots and lots of places. But if you also let your finger stroll down the pages, you will see that there are all number of sorts of poems that have only one place they've been published. And so in other newsletters you can find, I made a little mission of doing Stafford's uncollected poems. And I've also been up in the archive and found a number of really interesting uncollected poems. Although I was looking, somebody asked me to look for poems of his that were uncollected but never published. And I had the interesting experience of going through them and finding that indeed they were a little weak. And I found one poem, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but it was about teaching. Actually, my beautiful wife here, Ilka, found it. It was about teaching. And you know how Bill worked? He had a spiral-bound notebook, and he put the original in the notebook, and then he would write on the back where he sent it. And for instance, if you look on Traveling Through the Dark, you'll see that he sent it to 14 places before it was published by the Hudson Review. And if you look on this poem that we ran across in the unpublished poems, he calls them lost poems. And there's just one particular poem that is about teaching that has this incredible long list of places that it was sent to, and it was never published. And I'm gonna include it in the coming issue, because you'll be impressed by all the places he got this poem to, and nobody wanted that poem. But what I'm discovering is that a lot of people have not collected some of Stafford's really, really finest poems. And as proof of that, I'm going to read you some. And I'm going to read you one that is in the latest issue that's over there, which talks about, there's a poem about Stafford. You know, Stafford was really fascinated by Robinson Jeffers. And he hitchhiked from Kansas all the way to Carmel, California, to visit Jeffers. And got up to his door and did not knock and went away. and there's a piece by the president of the Robinson Jeffers Association about that in here called Traveling Through Light. Anyway, so this is a poem that has never appeared in any of Stafford's major volumes, but it appeared in a really sweet chapbook called Wyoming. And it's called Staring at Souvenirs in the West. Staring at Souvenirs of the West. What if a buffalo eye, big as the wrongs done to them, looked into the lodges and hotels of Indians and whites? What if Buffalo Bill stared into his own gun barrel and saw what his victims saw? If the mountains came down to attend a memorial service for the shaggy, mistreated citizens. In parlors and lunchrooms, let's have crocheted work and beads, a decorative bundle, straw flowers, many sacred things heaped over the guns, and hard-eyed portraits these warriors awarded themselves. Take your Winchesters and your war bonnets into that cold you claimed, heroes. Here is the cross that the wife that the wife of Sitting Bull hid. She held it in her close in her hand when the shouting died. And this poem you can find right over there. And here's another one that's from Field magazine, which loved Stafford's work. And this one has never appeared in a volume anywhere. It's called The Right Time. All the lies in our town ran to the river one summer night and jumped in. It was after a band concert in the park, full moon, fireflies, ice cream on the way home. And like a hive of bees, the lies just up and left. They couldn't stand it anymore. I sat on the front porch and watched through the moonlight hours. Owls along the street began to mourn. A glow at every corner, our town stretched out and slept. A window in Jane's house on the corner shone and then dimmed. In heavy darkness out there, my teachers were sleeping, and the mean cop who chased us from the fairgrounds, and the bankers and merchants and mothers in their mysterious lives. After that night, I forgave and was forgiven. The courthouse, the school, parents, police, these never frightened me afterward. When we live again, when Crazy Horse comes back and the buffalo dot the hills, one little shadow will wait off to the side. It will be staring through a thin row of trees at a full moon floating and waiting while the lights go off in a town, late and still on a summer night. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Liz?
Thank you, Tom. Waiting by the sea. This tide pool day you inhabit contains more than you need. It stirs now and then with faint news of old storms deeper than the earth. From caves around you, feelers and claws wave, and then withdraw and wait till tomorrow. Sunlight is alive when it swims down where you are, and you're alert to take in the sun, and you become a stone, and then a ghost of a stone, and then the gone water's brilliant memory of where a stone was. Making the day expand in your heart, you play a limited part in whatever life is, waiting for that great gift when enlightenment comes, that long instant when the tide calls your name. Thank you. And one of mine, one of Portland's best kept secret is a garden called Elk Rock or Bishop's Close. It's as you're heading from downtown Portland to Lake Oswego. It's really close there, perched over the river. So this is called Afternoon in the Public Garden. We come here to name flowers, 100, half the number of bones in your body, count your spine too. On the weathered bench you begin, the myth of the Minotaur, half man, half bull, trapped in the labyrinth where he's fed maidens and men. All around us are interpreters. Sparrows, bees, even clover have tongue. Cryptomeria lingers down a stone wall, like peacock feathers, you say. And then simile and metaphor stop just at Bold Cliff, with river barely in view, where Indians chased elk, and they became food. No containment, just a strange, splashing cry. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Liz. I think one of the things about doing these William Stafford events is that it's always an opportunity to read his poetry again. And so in reading it, I always find being reminded of how rich it is. And what I try to do is to read poems that I haven't read particularly. And actually this poem, Marge referenced, she talked about listening. This is listening from the book Ask Me. My father could hear a little animal step or a moth in the dark against the screen. And every far sound called the listening out into places where the rest of us had never been. More spoke to him from the soft, wild night than came to our porch for us on the wind. We would watch him look up, and his face so keen till the walls of the word flared, widened. My father heard so much that we still stand, inviting the quiet by turning the face, waiting for a time when something in the night will touch us too from that other place. Bill Stafford's poem, Listening. And a poem I want to share, hopefully there's some connection. It's titled At Sea, and I want to say that it references the Prince of Wales and Wallace Simpson. We all know how that story turned out in the 30s, but the prince wanted to marry Wallace, but she'd been divorced, so they weren't going to allow it in 1936. At sea. We're at sea, sailing from Nassau, Bahamas to Cozumel, Mexico, for my mother-in-law's 98th birthday. Water everywhere, no other ship in sight. The cruise liner revels in its size, so big there's no sensation of being at sea. Everywhere there are people of all shapes and sizes. We are all at sea together, as if we knew what the future held. Times have changed since 1936, when the Prince of Wales and Wallace Simpson sailed from New York. My mother-in-law may have known them. People dressed then to promenade. They came to see and be seen. Wallace thinking one day she would be queen, perhaps already in love with the prince, certainly sure of him. They were at sea too, just as we are today, wondering if a ship bringing some neon albatross will emerge from the horizon, carry a new virus or other disastrous news, or the answer to life's riddles. We docked in Cozumel, just as Wallace and the Prince docked at Southampton, happy to be on land again, not at sea. At sea. So thank you very much. And we have Nate, and then my lovely wife Jane. And please give some thoughts if anyone who has not read a poem wants to read a poem.
Okay, this first poem that I'm going to read is You Reading This, Be Ready. Starting here, what do you want to remember? How sunlight creeps along a shining floor? What scent of old wood hovers? What softened sound from outside fills the air? Will you ever bring a better gift for the world than the breathing respect that you carry wherever you go right now? Are you waiting for time to show you some better thoughts? When you turn around, starting here, lift this new glimpse that you found, carry into evening all that you want from this day. This interval you spent reading or hearing this, keep it for life. What can anyone give you greater than now, starting here, right in this room, when you turn around? This next one is for my young friends who are afraid. This is a country to cross you will, Find in the corner of your eye, in the quick slip of your foot, ere far down, a snap that might have caught, and maybe for you, for me, a high passing voice that finds its way by being afraid. That country is there for us, carried as it is crossed. What you fear will not go away. It will take you into yourself and bless you and keep you. That's the world, and we all live there.
Well, choosing a poem or two is a challenge. There's so much to explore. So here's two poems that I will read that I had no idea he would write about. One of them is this first one, Religion Back Home. When God's parachute failed, about the spring of 1945, the sky in Texas jerked open and we all sailed easily into the new harness on the stars. The minister smoked and he drank, and that was the woman that was in the choir. But what really finished him, he wore spats. A slim review of Salmon Agustin, written for Miss Arlington's class in the liberal high school. Our Father who art in heaven can lick their Father who art in heaven. And when my little brother chanted, in 1492, Jesus crossed the ocean blue, Mother said, "You mean Columbia crossed the ocean blue?" And he said, "I always do get them two guys mixed up."
Is there anyone that has not read a poem that would like to read a poem? Because we have a open mic, and we have a couple of minutes, if anyone would like to. And it sounds like not. So I want to make some thanks. What a rich afternoon. Thank you all for being here and sharing and coming into the community. So you know that poetry is meant to be read out loud, and so that's what we've been doing, is sharing. I want to thank Steve. If you're still logged on, I want to read Steve's book. So I would like to see it come out. So I'm definitely going to get a copy and wanted to do that. I wanted to hear the more from Marge and David on your ending poems. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about each one of those and some of our poems. So thank you for being here. It's always great to have Tim Marge here too. So we really appreciate what I should say both of you. We appreciate what the Friends of William Stafford do, which is a lot of good. So, yes, there are Friends of William Stafford magazines. And are those the most recent ones? And you have some back ones? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's great. So please take them. Same thing as for the refreshments. If you want to enjoy the refreshments, that's what they're there for. Our next event here is going to be John Van Driel. He's going to be here the second Wednesday in February, and I'd have to look up the exact date, but it'll be here at the library at the community room here on a second Wednesday. So thank you all for being here. Thank you those of you who logged in and have been on the live stream. Great to have you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah. What a great afternoon.